All right, how about we go live, huh? How's it going? Chuck Holton here, coming to you from Jerusalem. Back in the background behind me, still quiet, not a lot of stuff going on, at least here in Jerusalem. Thank you for being a part of our live tonight. And if you are in the chat down there, why don't you let me know where you're coming in from? How did I get two of these popped out? I got two chats. Okay, I'll close that one. So, good to see you guys from West Virginia. All right, Redding and Fort Davis, Waco, Texas, Crawford, Texas. All right. Arizona. People just come in from all over the place. Low audio, I'm told. Let's see here. If I can make the audio a little better. There we go. I think that will work. Make the audio a little better here. Sound. Input. Oh, it's on the... I see what the problem is. Let's do this. How about that? Now we should have some better audio. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right. Yep, we got it. Okay. That should be better audio. Just make sure everything's working right. This is a very complex thing for a guy like me. Okay. I'm not drinking a cheese latte tonight like I drank last night on my own podcast. If you want to see that, I actually found this weird coffee drink in the local grocery store that's some kind of Chinese knockoff Starbucks. It's not a Starbucks drink, but it has the Starbucks logo on it, but it's in Chinese. And the only thing it says in English is cheese latte. And I don't know what a cheese latte was, but I tried it and tried it on camera. You can go watch it on my live from last night if you want, right at the beginning. It was not something I would do again. Cheese latte was not great. So everybody was expecting or thinking that we'd been told by all the experts that perhaps Iran was waiting to attack last night because it was Tish B'Av, Eve, I guess. But I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and there was no attack. So I said, bag it, and I rolled over and went back to sleep. The only thing that was exciting last night was we had a 4.5 earthquake. As soon as I laid down in bed last night, I felt this shaking and went, wow, well, that's an earthquake. And I was too tired to care, and so I rolled over and went back to sleep. Have you ever been through an earthquake? I've been in some rather large ones when I was covering the earthquake in Haiti. They had some aftershocks down there that were like in the 6 to 7 range, and they were like, you can't even stand up. It was crazy. We have them in Panama once in a while, but not really anything to be concerned about. This was significant. I mean, I certainly felt it. Glad to see I'm still alive, Kim, after drinking the cheese latte. I just tasted it, and it's like a buttermilk cappuccino with a side of gym socks or something. It wasn't great. I wouldn't buy one again. So I almost find myself wishing that Iran would either, send it or end it here, because they've been telling us ever since I got here more than a week ago that any day Iran's going to unleash this massive attack. And obviously I don't want them to attack, but it's kind of frustrating that they just keep saying they're going to and then they do nothing. So either shut up or put up. And obviously I'm hoping they just shut up. It's not looking great, though, because the United States and the UK and France and a bunch of other countries signed a joint declaration yesterday telling Iran they need to not retaliate, to not attack. And today Iran kind of went, yeah, that's not going to happen. They just blew them off and said they're going to do it anyway. But I want to talk about, here's what I found: Starbucks cheese latte, China, ingredients, espresso milk, cheese foam. Okay, well, it wasn't great, whatever it was. What I wanted to talk about tonight was the attempts that Iran is making to increase the number of proxies that it has all around the region. I actually mentioned it just kind of in passing maybe a week or so ago, that Iran has been sending weapons to Somalia to try to establish a proxy there. The problem with that is, if there's any place on planet Earth that should not have more weapons, it's Somalia. I've been to Somalia a couple times, and it is just it's a terrible, terrible place. It's a failed state. There's no organization. It's just survival of the fittest, absolute anarchy and chaos. You could walk down the street and just shoot somebody if you wanted to, and there's no real police to speak of. The only people that might come after you are the family or the tribe that person you shot belonged to. Kind of like Detroit. And so they don't need any more weapons. But since the African Union troops that the United States was paying for years to try to get a handle on al-Shabaab, which is the ISIS affiliate in Somalia, since they pulled out, there's not really much left there. We still actually have some U.S. troops there, believe it or not, just a few. We've pulled out most of them. And so Iran is attempting to create a proxy in Somalia to strike at U.S. interests around North Africa, or the Horn of Africa, I guess you'd call it. It's a strategically important place because you got the Gulf of Aden, the Indian Ocean there. There's a lot of shipping that goes through there. If they control Somalia and they control Yemen, they can shut off the Suez Canal completely. I mean, they could at least make it so it's not worth it to even try to get through there. They've already got they got a good handle on the piracy problem that they had several years ago in the Gulf of Aden there, right off the coast of Somalia. And that Bab al-Mandab Strait, you know, it's just ships have to go through there to get to the Suez. And so guys that go out in these open, we call them pangas in Panama, they're just wooden boats, long wooden speedboats, and go take 15 guys in a speedboat and go up to a cargo ship, throw a ladder or a rope over the side and climb up, and you got yourself a cargo ship. And then they'd pull it into a sort of a bay somewhere along the coast up near Bosaso in Somalia. I've been there too. And they had all these little coves where the pirates would hang out with the ships that they had captured, and they would just ask for millions of dollars of ransom money. But, you know, that was the only growth industry in Somalia for a time. The way that they sort of put a damper on it was to finally start putting armed men on many of those cargo ships. And so when they saw one of the wooden boats coming toward them, they would just go poof and put a round right at the waterline in that wooden dinghy. And those guys aren't known for being able to swim really well. And so that functions, that's what we call a deterrent, right? You drown a bunch of skinnies from Somalia, and that becomes a deterrent. Those guys go, yeah, I don't want to die in the ocean, so I'll just stay on shore. Somalia's got a pretty complex political landscape, and the instability there makes them sort of ripe for becoming a proxy. Of course, al-Shabaab wants to be with the cool kids on the block as far as the extremist Muslims go in that region, and they need military equipment, training, maybe some economic assistance, that sort of thing. And so that's what Iran is offering to Somalia. Now you might say Somalia is small. What's a big deal? It's just one more place that Iran is extending its influence to, where the United States influence is waning. We've had troops there, a small number of special operations guys, who have been kind of keeping a lid on al-Shabaab for years, Navy SEALs and that sort of thing. And we have very good signals and, aerial intelligence assets over there. We were flying some drones. We still fly drones out of Djibouti. And with those drones, we could keep an eye on the al-Shabaab terrorist group. And when we saw a bunch of them getting together for a powwow someplace, we'd just send in the Navy SEALs to ruin their weekend. And that'd be that. But we're pulling troops out of there. The Biden administration has been drawing down the footprint in the whole region. And so somebody's going to fill that void. Well, it turns out that's going to be Iran. Now, this is all part of a broader strategy on the part of Iran to influence, to extend its influence out of the Middle East into Africa. I would venture to say that they are, in some ways, creating proxies in Europe and in the United States. They're called clueless college kids. And Iran, with the help of financial assistance from Qatar and places like that, is working very hard to radicalize kids in our institutions of higher learning. And they're doing a pretty good job of it, as you can see by all of the protests. Just wait for the Democratic Convention. The protests outside the Democratic Convention this year, the pro-Hamas protests, are going to be lit. And I'm saying that literally. They're going to be lit, like they're going to be burning things down. It's going to be big. If I really want to cover war, I should go cover that, because there's going to be probably more violence going on there. What is that? Are they meeting in, I forget, Chicago? I just spaced on where they're meeting. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be crazy. And so Iran's strategy here is to increase its influence around the world. Now, something that you might not have known is that Iran actually has, in terms of numbers, the 7th largest military on planet Earth, with roughly 610,000 active personnel. Now, that doesn't necessarily translate to 7th most powerful army in the world, because they don't have the ability to basically leave Iran, or at least they could go into neighboring countries, but not much more than that. But in terms of just raw numbers, 610,000 is a lot. The United States has roughly 1.3 million active duty personnel, and that only makes us number 3 in the world in terms of people. China has 2 million, India has 1.4, I think, and North Korea has 1.2 right behind us. So the United States is not the largest military in the world, but in terms of combat power, the United States is far and away bigger than its nearest rival, which is China. Because of our expeditionary military, our 12 carrier groups that we have floating around the world, And really, we built them to preserve and protect the sea lane so that global trade could work. Global trade doesn't work very well, as you can imagine, when, you know, starving little guys from places like Yemen and Somalia can get in a little wooden dinghy and row out to your ships and take them over. And there's nobody to go and shoot them out of the water. It is imperative, if global trade will continue the way it has for the last 50 years, that somebody protect the shipping lanes. And the United States is doing less and less of that as our Navy is less and less capable. You know, I heard today that China is building something like 9 new frigates a year, trying to, we're still, I believe, slightly, I mean, we're definitely more powerful. We have more aircraft carriers, destroyers, things like that. But China is rapidly building a larger force, a larger navy, and that larger navy will allow it to become a global superpower that can extend its military might across the globe, something it has not been able to do heretofore. And that makes it really one of only 2 in the entire world that can do that. I mean, of course, Great Britain's got a good navy, and they could extend some force, but they have a very, the UK has, they're number 6 in the world as far as military power, but they're not even in the top 10 in terms of size. So they, I mean, they count, they certainly can help, and they are helping in this conflict. But, so all that to say, Iran is number 7 in terms of size, but it's not even in the top 10 in terms of combat power. Israel is more powerful, has a more powerful military than Iran does, even though they have about half the numbers, or they had about half the numbers. I think now they're, at right this minute, they probably have 500,000 men under arms or something thereabouts. So they're approaching that number, but they're at war, so that's understandable. Normally, I think they only had, I want to say 160,000 before October 7th. So Israel has ramped up quickly and is, you know, able to take on other militaries. But in the case of Iran and its beef with Israel, all they're really going to be able to do is shoot missiles and bombs at each other. The difference is Iran is much larger, much more spread out, and does not have anywhere near the air defense capability that Israel has. And so this is going to go worse for Iran than it goes for Israel if a full-scale, as the case may be, war kicks off. Now, this is why Iran opted to develop these proxy forces rather than develop an expeditionary military that could march across Iraq and Jordan to get to Israel. They just send money to and weapons to Hezbollah, and they've been developing that since the 1990s. And, well, before that, really, even quite a bit before that. And I think that if you look at what Iran is doing, from the Iranian point of view, it makes sense. Somebody else gets to do all the fighting and dying for them, or at least most of it. It cost Iran some money, but they're going to spend that money on their military anyway. And it's a way to have some plausible deniability. We didn't tell them to attack. Like, wait, Hamas? October 7th? What? We didn't have anything to do with that. Well, we know they did, but they still have the information war sort of win. They're stacking the deck in their favor by developing these proxy forces. And so it's cheaper. It's a safeguard, they feel, for their nuclear program, because, I mean, Hezbollah is decidedly a safeguard for Iran against Israel bombing Iran's nuclear program. Hezbollah is right there on Israel's border. And so Iran's like, you better not bomb our nuclear sites or Hezbollah, boom, you know. And that's a real, that's actually a smart play on the part of Iran. It's certainly not moral. It's kind of cowardly. It's a smart play in the same way that hiding behind women and children is a smart play for Hamas, so that they can whine and cry that Israel killed a bunch of women and children when they were shooting at Hamas operatives who were shooting at them. And the media laps it up like a bunch of little puppies and runs with it. So, you know, it makes that, you know, it's just crazy. Israel is getting attacked from 5 different directions, and somehow they're painted as the aggressor here. You know, like it's unbelievable how the media can twist that and pervert that, the reality of what's happening on the ground. So we'll just check and make sure I'm actually still, we got 4,500 people online. And I wanted to just mention that CBN is a viewer-funded organization. So if you want to keep us out in the field, bringing you this good commentary and good news from all around the world, especially the Holy Land, go to cbn.com and you can donate over there. You can also go to chuckholton.com and support my work, all the other stuff that I do with my documentaries and my books. And you can find more information that I'm not allowed to put on YouTube for various reasons that you probably want to see about this war. Some of it is too graphic. Some of it is stuff that YouTube would flag or demonetize me for just because. I even, you know, we did a prayer time once and they demonetized us. So we can, I can put stuff up over on chuckholton.com that I can't show you right now. Now, also, you can go to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton right after, that's on YouTube. Right after this live, I'm going to go over there and do another live because we are very, very close to crossing over that magical 100,000 mark in terms of subscribers on my YouTube channel. So you can go to @Hot Zone Podcast, which I just put in the chat there. You can go there, and maybe my wife, I think, is modding. She can put up the actual link to my Hot Zone that you can just click on. And you can help us get over 100,000. We only need like a little less than 200 more subscribers over there to get to 100,000. And we're going to have a big celebration. I don't know really what we're going to do, but we're going to cheer and be very happy. Yeah, I'm not even sure why that's such a big deal other than it's a nice round number, but it's still pretty cool. So you can help us by going over to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton and subscribing. And if you will do that, I will skip the ads that are about to show in 10 seconds. I just noticed that I can do that. That's kind of cool. So I'm going to hit skip ads. And so you won't see any ads right now. And you can click that link and go over to the Hot Zone and subscribe, and maybe I will actually get done with this live and already be over 100,000 over there because with 4,500 people online, that's definitely doable. So let's talk more about this proxy idea. It's not just Somalia that Iran is trying to develop into a new proxy. There's one much closer to home in terms of a threat to Israel, and that's in the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, as it's rightly known. So I'm going to pull up a map here, and I want to show you. Let's see if I can pull up my map. Nope, that's not it. I got to pull up this window and then the map. Okay, there we go. So we got a map here. This is Jerusalem. I'm going to pull out of Jerusalem, and I want to show you. Well, you can see what they call the West Bank here, marked right there, and the dotted line goes down below Hebron, comes up, skirts around, just barely around Jerusalem, and actually includes part of East Jerusalem, where I went shopping today, and then goes up here and actually goes right along the outskirts of Tel Aviv, believe it or not. Goes up to this little town called Kalkia, which I will talk about in just a second, and goes all the way up to Jenin, which you see there the line. Now, within what they call the West Bank, you see Nablus there, that's biblical Shechem. All of this is Israeli territory. They took it back from Jordan, and I mean, Jordan controlled it for, I don't know, 19, 20 years, I think. And then they had a war, and Israel took it back. And when they took it, they kept it. But it was full of Palestinians, and so then they had to figure out what to do with those people. Fast forward to the 1990s, and we had these things called the Oslo Accords. And the Oslo Accords came up with a strategy for trying to allow the Palestinians, who obviously they don't want to be Israeli by and large. They don't want to be part of Israel. They want to have their own country. But even if they say they want a two-state solution, they don't, because every time they've been offered a two-state solution, they turned it down. They don't want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution, and that is to make the whole of Israel, the whole thing, into a country called Palestine. Now, there is a Palestinian country already. It's right over here. And right now we call it Jordan. This country over here, 60% Palestinian. And so the Palestinians could call that their country, could call that, you know, their own country if they wanted to, but they don't. They want to stay in this region, and they really want to kick the Jews out of the rest of Israel and take over that too. Now, inside, because of the Oslo Accords, inside the area that is known as the West Bank, they have divided it up into 3 sections. I've talked about this a lot, like back in October, November, when I first got here to cover the war. Many people who are watching now weren't watching me back then, so I'm going to go through it again. If you have been watching me all that time, first of all, thank you very much. Secondly, probably good to get a refresher if you're not really up to speed on all this. There's 3 zones in, I'm going to just, we'll call it Judea and Samaria, okay? Oh, beeper guy! And it's the same van as before. Unfortunately, I cannot show you because my camera's on a tripod and I don't want to mess it up. But the famous beeper guy, if you don't know, when I was here in October, starting October 9th and doing these lives, every single night, this guy shows up with the loudest backup beeper on planet Earth and spends about 5 minutes slowly, very slowly, backing his van across the parking lot. He's only halfway. Across the parking lot into the spot where he parks for the night. And wait, here he comes. He's almost done. He's almost done. Wait, a little more. Come on. Yay! Holy cow, that's the loudest beeper I've ever heard. I mean, I'm 7 floors up. That's crazy. We need to make t-shirts, beeper guy t-shirts or something. That would be cool. Anyway, So let's go back to talking about the West Bank here, or Judea and Samaria. 3 zones. There's Zone A, Zone B, and Zone C. Zone A is administered by the Palestinian Authority and policed by the Palestinian Authority. Only Palestinians can live there. Only Palestinians can legally enter there. Israeli citizens are not allowed by law into A zones within their own country. So I'm trying to think, is there any place in the United States where an American citizen would be not allowed to go by law, but people who are not citizens of the country get to live? I can't think of any place like that. So it's kind of mind-boggling to think about if you're an American. You know, they tell you, yeah, this is your country, but you're not allowed to go into. I mean, it's a fairly large area. Places like Jericho, the biblical city of Jericho, the biblical city of Shechem, which is now Nablus. Can't go in there. And then there are B zones. Well, let's go to the C zones first. There are C zones, and C zones are administered and policed by the Israelis. And Israelis can legally live inside those zones. They have to get a permit to buy the land. They have to go through building permits and all that kind of just normal stuff like you would have to do if you wanted to buy some land and build a house. They have to get a title to the, and all that. But they can legally live there. And this is the area where the quote-unquote settlements are that the United Nations keep saying are illegal settlements. Well, they're not. They're not illegal. They're completely legal in the country where they are, which is Israel. And for the United Nations to claim that they're illegal settlements is just like if the United Nations said that, just made a decree that it is now illegal for Americans to own firearms. Americans would go like, wait, what? What does the UN have to say with what the laws will be inside a sovereign country? They don't. But the United Nations has tried to sort of claim that the West Bank belongs to the Palestinians. But it doesn't. In its entirety, it doesn't. It's Israeli land. And so in the C zones, you will find lots of Jews, lots of other Israelis, lots of Arabs too. And, they live there. They build their little communities. And, what's crazy is a lot of those communities are actually built by Palestinians, or at least were. I would say are. They're built by Palestinians. They actually hire Palestinians to come build their houses in the C zones. That's something most people don't realize. So now let's talk about the B zones. The B zones are like transitory zones where they kind of need for both Israelis and Palestinians to be able to use them to get to either the A zones or the C zones. So when I go visit the guys at HaYovel, for example, up on the Mount of Blessing, Mount Gerizim, I think is what that's called. They live in a C zone, but I have to drive through a B zone to get to the C zone. And so the B zone is administered by the Palestinian Authority, and Palestinians can live there, but it is policed by the IDF so that it will be safe enough for Israelis to drive through. And so that's the complicated setup they have in Judea and Samaria and Hebron. Now, there's this town that I pointed out to you that is called Kalkia. It's right here. And Kalkia is just outside of Tel Aviv, and it's just inside the boundary of the West Bank. And it is an A zone. However, and so it's technically illegal for Israelis to enter. However, apparently a lot of Israelis do enter there kind of at their own risk. There's a mosque in Kalkia. A lot of Israelis do go in there from time to time to go shopping because they can get things cheaper in there. And, you know, actually, normally the Palestinians don't really mind. They are certainly happy to take money from the Israelis who come in, right? And so this is what it looks like. And it definitely looks like an Arab country to me, having been to a lot of Arab countries. This does not look like the rest of Israel, that's for sure. And so yesterday, here's what happened. There was a guy that was shopping in Kalkia, and he was shot by a Hamas terrorist. Now, I want to point something out here. The Israelis have been fighting in Gaza for nigh on 10 months, right? A little over 10 months now, I guess. And they have killed more than 10,000 terrorists inside Gaza. There's still a couple thousand running around in there probably. And even today, there were rockets fired out of Khan Yunis into like Ashkelon, Ashdod area. One of them landed out at sea, and one of them never made it out of Gaza. It actually landed inside Gaza. But so it didn't hurt anybody. But that just goes to show that even now, after more than 10 months, that the Hamas fighters are not defeated. They're still able to fire rockets now and then, not nearly on the scale that they were before. And they've taken thousands of rockets out of there and destroyed them in these operations. But, I mean, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? That Hamas is still fighting that much in Gaza. So the IDF had to cordon off, and incidentally, I believe these were fired out of a designated safe zone that Israel has designated for the Palestinians to be able to go to and stay away from the fighting. And then they shoot rockets and mortars and stuff out of those. I mean, this is the playbook. This is what Hamas does. Wherever they can find women and children to hide behind, they go hide behind women and children because they're absolute cowards. And it's effective for them because they get women and children killed that way, and then that gets them stature, that gets them sympathy with the world media and politicians and stuff around the world, which is absolutely disgusting because anybody with a shred of sense can see that if you're the belligerent party who started this whole thing in October last year, and then you ran back home and hid behind your mommy and continued to shoot at the IDF when they come in to try to clear out your rockets and missiles and terrorists from behind your mommy, and your mommy gets shot when they shoot back at you, and then you say that it's their fault for shooting your mommy. No, it's not. It's your fault, coward. It's your fault for getting your mother shot. This is beyond the pale. You don't do this. Civilized people, well, first of all, civilized people would have never done October 7th. So I can stop right there. Point, period, end of story. But it's effective for them, and so they keep doing it. It's only effective because we allow it to be in the media. Okay, so this event that happened yesterday, Monday, in Kalkia, there was a guy that went into Kalkia to go shopping. He shouldn't have been there. It's technically illegal for him to be there, but he went in there to go shopping, and a lot of people do. And it's Definitely dangerous for him to do so, but he was just trying to save a buck probably. And he got shot by a terrorist. That terrorist also shot 2 other Palestinians in the process. Oops. Nobody was killed except the terrorist, because then the terrorist ran off. The IDF came and tracked him down. There was a gunfight, and the terrorist took the room temperature challenge. And so then the IDF identified the terrorist. As it turns out, he was only 18 years old. And the story gets more interesting than that. This 18-year-old was one of the prisoners who was traded for the 50 hostages that were released back in November. He was 17 at the time when he was traded. He was one of those children that the media was trying to crucify the Israelis for holding in their prisons. And he was in that prison because when he was 14, he had stabbed an Israeli and his son in Jerusalem. And so what did he do? He immediately went right back to terror activities. So the IDF knew about him, had a APB out on this kid, and was trying to find him anyway. He made it easy by shooting somebody and then running off, and the IDF tracked him down, and that was it for him. Now I want to just comment on what a tragedy this is, because when I look at pictures of this young guy, what I see is my own son, one of my sons. You know, kids don't grow up hating each other. You got to teach them. And this kid was raised in a society that's so steeped in hate. Hate is like the air that it breathes. And this kid looked like a good-looking young guy. For some reason, whenever I see a kid that's like the age of one of my kids get killed, even if he had it coming, it bothers me. And I hope it bothers you too. I mean, obviously, he got what he deserved. You know, you pay your money, you take your chances. You go out and start shooting at Israelis, good chance you might eat a bullet. But it's just a real shame. It's a real shame. I feel like, you know, if I could have gotten a hold of that kid maybe a few years ago, and if we could have somehow taught him the love of Jesus, changed his heart, he wouldn't have had to die. And this poor guy that just went looking for vegetables wouldn't have had to get shot either. So, just makes me sad, you know? Doesn't it make you sad? So his name was Tariq Daoud, 18 years old, and that's it for him. Now, the next little tidbit of information is the point of this story. After he was killed, Hamas announced that their field commander, Tariq Daoud, had been killed in Kalkia. They made an 18-year-old kid a field commander in their army. And he wasn't in Gaza. He was in Samaria. And what that tells you is that when and if the IDF is able to terminate their operations in Gaza and accomplish their objectives there of wiping out all resistance, there's still a lot of people that hate them in Judea, Samaria, and Hebron. And Hamas still has their claws into those people too. So even if you destroy Hamas in Gaza, which they need to do, this thing isn't going to be over. Hamas is still going to be spreading its cancer of cowardice throughout the West Bank region. And incidentally, Hamas has operatives in Lebanon and in Syria as well. So this is going to go on for a long, long time. And it has been going on for a long, long time. It's changed names. It was the PLO for a while. It was Fatah for a while. They might reconstitute under a new name, call it something new, but we need to pray that their hearts will change. You know, there was a pundit in the United States years ago, back kind of at the beginning of the war in Afghanistan, who said, the only way we're going to win this war in Afghanistan is to go kill their leaders and convert the rest of them to Christianity. And she was soundly drubbed for that. I mean, she was dragged through the press and, you know, excoriated for her views. But, you know, she was right. And that's exactly the solution here, too, is about the only thing that can change that. I mean, it's not a workable solution because it's just not going to happen. First of all, the people that are fighting are not Christians, but we just need to convert them all to Christianity. They need a heart change, and that's the only way to fix the problem of hate. You see, you can go in and you can bring peace with the sword, and you can still hate each other. You can bring in an army that is so strong, so powerful, that they can just kill any opposition, and everybody can still hate them. So you can have hate and peace as long as the sword is big enough. But if you bring love in, and forgiveness, and redemption, and liberty, those things that you only get when you get your heart changed by Jesus Christ, then love drives out hate. And if hate is gone, then you get peace in the bargain. Peace is a byproduct of driving out hate. Now, I'm not saying that all the IDF needs to do is go give these Palestinian guys a hug and it'll all be better. It won't. It won't be better. It won't be better until the Holy Spirit moves in this region and maybe sends some more people to spread the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news of love and redemption and forgiveness. Because this strategy, this war that we see right now, this never-ending conflict that goes all the way back to the founding of this country, where they kill some of ours and so we kill some of theirs, and then they kill some of ours and then we kill some of theirs, and they retaliate and we retaliate, and they retaliate for our retaliation and we retaliate for their retaliation of our retaliation, and it goes on and on and on forever, ad nauseum. It's like it'll never end. Somebody has to break the cycle. Now, to its credit, Israel has tried to be that somebody many, many times. But when you're dealing with an adversary who knows nothing of forgiveness, knows nothing of redemption, knows nothing of spiritual freedom, is literally enslaved to an ideology of hate and death, then the only thing you're left with in the real world is where we are today. Is the IDF trying at the very least, to reduce their enemy to tatters so that they don't have the power to be a threat, at least for a little while, until they can build up their strength once more. And then they'll have to do this again. That's the only option for them at the moment. So we are currently, let's see, live streaming here. I got about 4,000 concurrent viewers. Please go hit the like button, folks. Hitting that like button tells YouTube that they need to show this live stream to lots of people that have never seen it before. So it pops up in their feed and they go, oh, who's this very handsome gentleman? And they click on that live feed and they get to hear messages like what I just gave you. So if you believe, like I do, that things like love and forgiveness and redemption and freedom come only through a heart change, then go share this and like it and go over to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton and subscribe over there as well. Make sure you're subscribed to these channels and then you'll get notified when we're going to come on live again. So we're 50 minutes into this. I wanted to take the last 10 minutes to answer some questions. So let me see if I can find my chat box again. And I will start from the bottom and work my way up. If you asked a question way up there somewhere, ask it again. Okay, here's one. Do you see Egypt evolving through this in terms of getting involved in a greater way? Not really. Egypt is actually getting paid off by the United States to stay out of it. Okay? CBN just went over 2 million subscribers yesterday. We're pretty happy about that. Do you think about the talks? What do you think about the talks between Putin and Palestine? Vladimir Putin would love for this conflict to continue and even get worse so that it will dilute the world's attention from what's happening in Ukraine. I think that's the best answer I can give you for that one. Let's see here. I'm going to back up a little bit. Question. Oh, no, you already asked that one. How do you see Egypt? Okay. What do you think the tribulation is? Jacob's trouble, the Muslims are some of the trouble. It's a good question. Here's the thing. It's not that I don't have opinions on these topics of prophecy, end times, revelation, the tribulation, all that kind of stuff. The thing is, I'm reticent to get into it on this forum. And you know why? Because then I get buried by extremely long emails from people who have a different point of view, who want to educate me on all the ways that I was wrong. And I just don't feel like getting into that. You know, these are, and what I do is I always come back to the book of Jude, right before Revelation. I'm not saying Revelation isn't important, it is, but I'm saying if you take Revelation in the context of the book right before it, where the message of that book, it's one chapter, is simply keep pulling people out of the fire until I come. That's what Jesus wants. Keep pulling people out of the fire until he comes. And so I always just say, you know what? I'm going to focus on that part. I'm going to talk about that, pulling people out of the fire part. And I'll let you guys argue about pre-trib, post-trib, you know, all that stuff. The red heifers and yada, yada, yada. Again, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying I don't have an opinion about it. If you and I were sitting down to dinner together, I'd be happy to discuss it with you. But first thing I will admit, I'm not an expert at that. I've grown up in the church my whole life, and so I've been given a certain sort of bent when it comes to apocalyptic thinking. But that's as far as I'm going to go with that. Does that make sense? It's called war, and I'm poor and I'm not killing anyone. Do these terrorists exist due to them being poor? Okay, great question. That's just from You Grow, I Grow. I feel like if they had a future in the education, they would not be acting like a band of wild animals. Well, that's an understandable point of view because they are poor, and they're much poorer than the Israelis by and large. And So, you know, we see this in the United States too. The powers that be, the politicians, like to try to divide us as Americans into haves and have-nots. And those evil rich people, you didn't earn that. We need to take that from you and give it to the people who work for their money. Well, you don't get rich by not working. I mean, somebody has to work for the wealth, right? And so, you know, they call it things like white privilege in the United States. They call it things like, I guess, Israeli privilege. You could call it over here. Oh, they just have Israeli privilege. They just grew up in a place that's wealthy and everybody just is wealthy over there. Well, that's not the case. There are a lot of poor people in Israel as well. It's expensive, much more expensive in Israel than it is in the rest of Israel, in Judea and Samaria and Gaza, places like that. That's why that guy went shopping over there, because things are cheaper over there. But the argument that being poor pushes you to take desperate measures like blowing up a school bus full of kids or machine gunning a marketplace full of people just doesn't hold, because I can point out lots and lots and lots of poor places, very, very poor places around the world that are not violent. Panama is a case in point. The place where I live, my friend Sebastian, who just died, he didn't have any money. He never really made, I doubt he ever made $300 in any single month. And yet, he wasn't going out and killing people. So I think what you have to do is you have to separate the situation that they're in from the ideology that they're steeped in. It's not the conditions so much as it is the ideology. And that's why, for example, the 9/11 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, not known for its poverty, right? There are terrorists all the time in Kuwait, for example. Kuwait gives something like $100,000 to every citizen per year. So like me and my family would have gotten $700,000 a year just for breathing, not to mention free education, free health care, all just given to them. And yet some of them still go blow themselves up or try to commit terror. Iraq has a tremendous amount of wealth. They're not a very, I mean, they're a wealthy country, but the people in the country are not very wealthy because of corruption. But no matter how poor you are, you cannot make a moral argument that it's okay, that, oh, it's understandable. They're just poor. That's all they need. I remember Marie Harf during the Obama administration was a press secretary, and she said that one time. These ISIS terrorists, they just need jobs. That's what they need. They just need jobs. No, they don't. You could give them jobs and they would still try to cut your throat because they adhere to an ideology of death and hate. It's the ideology. It's the worldview. In the United States, do you think these snowflake, okay, I'm going to try not to be too harsh here. I'll tell you what I really think of these guys over on my channel. You think these Antifa goons that are rampaging through the streets are poor? No, most of them are rich white kids. They come from wealthy white families. Even the Black Lives Matter movement. Those people might be poorer than average in the United States, but poorer than average in the United States is still pretty darn wealthy. You don't have a lot to complain about if you live in the United States. Remember, there are literally hundreds of millions of people around the world, I would say arguably billions of people, who would come to the United States today if given the opportunity. And they are being given the opportunity at an unprecedented rate by the current administration. So I don't think you can make the argument that just because they're poor, that they that it's understandable that they do this. It's not. It's not poor. It is an ideology of hate and death. And they need a heart change. Okay, so that's about all I've got for... that's all I've got for tonight. I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to go over to my channel directly, and we're going to see if did we make 100,000, honey? I can't look at that while I'm on this one. So it's 9:30 at night over here, and so I'm going to go over there, and we're going to see if we can make it to 100,000. We just needed 200 more subs over on my channel, The Hot Zone with Chuck Holton. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel and you like this kind of format, please go over there and help us get over 100,000 tonight. That'd be I have a bottle of water to celebrate with. I drank my cheese latte yesterday, so I don't even have that. I don't have much food in this house because my wife is not here. So I basically just live on protein shakes and sunflower seeds when she's not here. So let me say a prayer and then we'll go. Lord God, I just pray that you would bring your peace to this land, that you would bring the freedom that comes in knowing Jesus, that you would help people understand that their own hatred is destroying their lives and the lives of those around them. I pray, Lord, that people here and around the world would just get tired of their hatred and would just let go of it and would submit themselves to you and would learn what true freedom really is, that freedom in Christ. Father, I pray for a heart change for the leadership of Iran. I pray for a heart change for the leadership in Lebanon, even for the leadership that needs it here in Israel. I pray that their hearts would be turned toward you and toward your Son. And I pray that they would come to know the forgiveness and the redemption and the love that drives out hatred and brings peace in the bargain. And I pray, Lord, that you would do this soon. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, thank you for being on the live tonight. Very nice to have you. And when you like my channel, weird trolls find you. That's interesting. All right, thank you very much. Not unless you answer my question. Well, Derek, what's your question? Post it again. I missed it. Derek, where's your question? Looking for your question, Derek. Can you post it again? I have cancer. I'm going to be dead soon. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope, Derek, that you listened to what I said about that heart change. God can heal you, but better than that, God can allow you to spend eternity with Him in His presence, where there is no death, there is no pain, there is no suffering. You can have that. You can have the very strong knowledge, a definitive knowledge that death is not the end for you. And Derek, all you need to do is submit yourself to Jesus. Just talk to Him like you'd talk to a friend. And just tell Him, I'm a sinner, I'm sorry. I want to submit myself to you. I want you to be the Lord of my life. And let God change you from the inside out. Let Him change your heart. And He might decide to heal your body as well. He has the power to do that. I've seen it happen. He does answer prayers. So did you have a question, Derek? Do you believe the Sabbath is on Saturday? Oh, okay. Thank you, Kelly Song. Derek asked, do you believe the Sabbath is on Saturday? And do you agree with Project 2025 when it comes to forcing people into Sunday worship? I'm not familiar with Project 2025 enough to know what you're talking about there. I was not aware that Project 2025 was trying to force people into Sunday worship. I highly doubt that's the case. Do I believe the Sabbath is on Saturday? Yes, I do. I mean, it's here in Israel, it's called Shabbat, Sabbath. In Spanish, it's called sábado, Sabbath. Now, I think that there are perfectly valid reasons for not going to church on the Sabbath and going to church instead on Sunday, because the New Testament gave us that kind of freedom. This is the freedom that I keep talking about. We don't have to be bound to a bunch of rules anymore. We don't have to be bound to the law, because we have grace. We can do whatever we want to. It's just that when we submit ourselves to Christ, He changes our want to. And we want to please Him. We want to follow Him. So if you want to worship God on the Sabbath, go right ahead. I want to worship God every day of the week. And if you want to have a longer talk about that, send me an email at hotzoneholton@gmail.com. Now, I know we have a lot of Jews who watch me. We have a lot of Israelis who watch me. And I just want to say one thing to you. Obviously, I'm coming at all of this from a Christian perspective, a Protestant Christian perspective. So if you're Catholic, if you're Mormon, if you're Jewish, if you're Hindu, if you're Buddhist, I hope that you will understand that I'm explaining to you my own worldview. I'm not trying to shove anything down your throat. I'm just telling you what I believe. You're free to believe whatever you like. And I respect your right to do that. And if you want to meet with me and tell me all about what you believe, or if you want to send me an email to hotzoneholton@gmail.com and tell me about what you believe, I'll read it. I'll listen. If you send me a 75-page email, I probably won't read the whole thing. I'll just stick it into ChatGPT and tell Chat to give me the high points. That's what I do. But I want you to know that I respect you if you're Jewish, if you're here in Israel. I love you. I love Israel. And I hope that you can understand at least where I'm coming from. So that's all I've got to say about that. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to go right over and go live over on my channel at the Hot Zone here in just a minute. So you can go and get notifications. Just subscribe, and it's already up there. And I'll start the live real quick. Okay? God bless you all. We'll see you again soon. And let's hope that it's another quiet night in Israel and we can all get some sleep. Okay? See you later.